Hello and welcome. I hope you all are doing well. We are doing well on this end. My daughter actually celebrated her 9th birthday this week, so we have been celebrating all week long. And of course, this birthday does not look like birthdays in the past because of COVID, but like everyone else, we are adapting and continue to adapt. But I still think she had a good time. So today we are going to continue this last episode of a 3-part series on alternative school environments. And I'm really excited about the conversation today. Today, my guest is Dr. Jason Bolton. He has over 20 years of experience working with children, adolescents, and families with histories of abuse, neglect, social emotional challenges, and neurodevelopmental disorders, including autism spectrum disorder and learning differences. He holds a doctorate in clinical psychology from the California School of Professional Psychology in Alameda. He is the Help Group's Vice President of Community Partnerships and Admissions and previously served the agency as a clinical director and chief psychologist. He sits on the board of directors of the California Association of Private Education Schools and Agencies, and most importantly, Dr. Bolton is a proud father of triplet girls. And as a parent consumer of developmental and special education services, he frequently refers to his family as a glowing example of the power of early intervention. I want us to jump right in so you don't miss any part of this conversation. Let's go.
Millions of kids struggle with learning, processing, and social emotional difficulties. These challenges interfere with their ability to reach their full potential. Dr. Karen Wilson is here to help. Her extensive background in pediatric neuropsychology and higher education have prepared her for this unique mission. Listen as she delivers content to inform, educate, and empower parents and educators. This will enable you to identify challenges that kids face and get them on the road to achieving their full potential. This is Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus.
Jason, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Karen. You guys do such good work, and we're honored to be here with you today.
I'm so glad that you're here. There's so much alignment in the work that we do and the families that we serve. It just seemed natural to have you on as we're discussing alternative learning environments for kids who struggle with learning, with neurodevelopmental disorders, and other social emotional challenges that impact the way that they learn.
Absolutely, absolutely. The help group we're closing in, I think, here on 50 years of
Wow.
providing non-public school services, and we're always striving to be a service to the community. So the more we hear from the community as well, the better our programs can be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, before we started, I said that we've been really talking about learning environments, school environments for kids who think differently and who learn differently and who may need something else in terms of an academic environment. And, when I think about the work that you all are doing and the work that you're involved with at the Help Group, a lot of parents wonder, where do they start if they're concerned that their child's current school placement is not a good fit? And they feel that their children need more support. Where do you even start that discussion with them, and where do they start?
Excellent question. A little bit about me, because I've actually been in those shoes before. So I have triplet 13-year-old daughters who, before the age of 3, were diagnosed as developmentally delayed by LAUSD. So I was in the exact same shoes. I was looking for what kind of services can we get going right now, and how is this all going to work? And I'd already been working at the Help Group for 10 years at that point. So, here I am thinking I really know how to do all of this, and still feeling like I need some help doing all of this. So, as a consumer now, I was looking at, do I go to a preschool, integrated environment? Do I go to a private school? Do I accept a LAUSD referral for preschool? Because we really wanted early intervention, to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so what ended happening in my own personal story is two of my daughters went to an LAUSD a preschool, and one of my other daughters went to a non-public school, went to our young learners preschool. I just happened to work there. It still was the right choice, right?
Right.
And then she was able to, in a year and a half of non-public school, she was able to join her sisters in the last year of preschool before launching off to kindergarten. So I think that the first place really is to think about, even though this is a well-known term in education, to think about the least restrictive environment and what's appropriate for your child. So for me, 66.6% of them, it was appropriate for them to be in a public school. And for my other daughter, she needed that help that a non-public school could provide in order to get her finally to be at the place where they were too. So we at the Help Group, we are a great option for kids who it's a good fit with. But there are other children who don't need that level of service or don't need it yet or need to try some other things first. And when I talk to parents, which is my favorite thing to do, my favorite thing about my job is to get the phone call that's very much like this, to get the phone call with, here's what my child is like, what do I do? And when that happens, I talk with them about all possibilities and then what we can provide. And then we'll meet and we'll decide if that makes, if that's a good fit. So we have kids who come at preschool. We have kids who the first time we see them is in 8th grade. And we have kids who the first time we see them is their senior year of high school. So it's really an individualized discussion about what makes the best sense for your child.
Absolutely. And I know that you've used the term LAUSD, and for people who are listening outside of California, that's the Los Angeles Unified School District. And both Jason and I are based in Los Angeles, California. And I think some parents may also be unfamiliar with the term NPS, or a non-public school, and what that means, what that term means, where does it come from? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. But before I do that, just to clarify, every time I said LAUSD, substitute the word school district into that, because federal law prevails, and whatever
Absolutely.
I'm saying here will fit for any school district in the country. So in California in particular, but in many other states as well, non-public schools exist, and non-public schools are private schools by definition, but the majority, and in some cases all of their students come to them with contracts with the local school district. So in all of our schools, we operate 16 non-public schools in Los Angeles, wow. With a little over 1,300 students. And in all of our schools, about 95% of those 1,300 students are funded by their local school district to come to our school. We do accept private pay students, and other non-public schools do as well. But again, that's about 5% of who we accept. So those kids who are able to come to us, the IEP team, the Individualized Education Plan team, has come together and has decided that a non-public school will best meet the needs of their student.
Right. And, when parents are thinking about a non-public school, and obviously these are specialized schools, and for all intents and purposes, they're private schools, even though they might be funded by school districts. How do you describe the difference in terms of what a child will experience in a non-public school, like one of the schools of the Help Group, compared to a traditional academic setting where they might get accommodations for attention issues, pull out for reading and speech? How will the experience differ? What will parents see in an NPS school like the Help Group?
So you use the word specialized, which is, an important word for us, and a decision that we have made, in saying that we have 16 schools. We could have made a decision where we maybe only have 4 schools, right, and still serve 1,300 students, and just by geography that we group those children. But instead, we've decided to create specialized, we use the word boutique schools, so that we have students who have like needs together. Now, in an environment where the word that you hear a lot is inclusion, this certainly doesn't fit that definition, right? So if you have a school that you've designed for children with autism who are near grade level, let's say, but struggle immensely with social skills development and independent daily living skills maybe as well, to the point where it was difficult for them to do well in their public school, and you have all of them being educated together, it certainly isn't inclusion. But what it is teachers and paraprofessionals and speech therapists and OTs and counselors who are all working together to work with a specialized population where 100% of their attention goes to working with those kids.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I alluded to this before, success in an environment like that might be a year and a half, and then you go back to your public school. It also might be that you come to us in 6th grade and you end up getting your high school diploma because you were able to do that with the help that we can give you. So sometimes I do have parents ask me, what's the average length of stay? Is that, how do I know if my kid has done well with you? And I resist answering that because I think success depends upon the needs of each individual child that presents to us. It might be my daughter who was there for a year and a half. It might be someone who stays with us for 6 years, graduates from college, and goes to a university or to a community college or to a job training program. That might be successful.
Yeah. And it sounds like in addition to being boutique and specialized, it's really individualized, because by having 16 different schools, you're making sure that when a child enters one of these schools, they're getting the support that they need, because kids who struggle with learning issues, who have neurodevelopmental disorders, differ greatly and they have different needs. And so what you're saying is that they can be met where they are and can grow the lagging skills. But if they have other abilities that are on age level and on grade level, they can also be challenged in those areas as well.
Absolutely. And that's how we have continued to develop schools over the years. So one of our newest schools is called STEM Cubed Academy. It's now been around for a few years. Started in the Valley, and now we have a sister school in Culver City, and we recently last year opened the same school in Orange County, and that was because we were seeing kids on the autism spectrum who had areas of significant strength. So maybe their whole learning profile is not elevated. They may still struggle with reading, for instance, but they have, math scores in the 140s. And so we developed STEM Cubed Academy because our school that would have been appropriate for that child, Village Glen at the time, who was doing a great job with that child, this allowed us to challenge, by creating STEM Cubed Academy, this allowed us to challenge that particular child really well with those areas where they had strengths. And our philosophy, really across our programs, but really at STEM Cubed Academy, our philosophy is to grow those strengths. Mm-hmm. Really pay attention to those strengths. And in doing so, you bring the whole child up. So that's been our philosophy in creating new programs over the years.
That is so important. I mean, I do that in the work that I do in our practice. Really, it's about not only identifying the areas of weakness, but also those strength areas are so important, because not only can they compensate for areas of weakness, but it allows a child and the experience of achieving success in a particular area, particularly when they've been struggling in another area for sometimes a long period of time.
And that's really true across the spectrum. I just use that as an example of a child who might have a very elevated propensity in certain areas. But in our Sunrise School, which serves kids, maybe they have Down syndrome or they have more classic looking autism, the same thing. You still find that strength. You still find that thing that they really do well and capitalize on that and elevate their ability to function well in whatever environment in school, in whatever environment they're also involved in.
Right. And it sounds like that's the ultimate goal by moving these kids, particularly if they're moving from a traditional school environment that where they haven't been successful, and transitioning to an NPS school, a school similar to the 16 schools that you have in the help group. You give them an opportunity to thrive in a way that they haven't thrived before, to again develop those skills that are lagging. And for some, it seems that it gives them an opportunity to get intense intervention to prepare them to re-enter a traditional school setting at some point.
Absolutely. We use that terminology, intensive intervention, all the time. And I think it's very important that everyone realizes that the IEP team, so even when a child comes to a non-public school like ours, that the IEP team remains in place. And the district referring the child remains responsible for that IEP. And so at least on a yearly basis, and on average, it's actually more frequent than yearly that IEPs are held for kids who are in non-public schools. The team continues to talk about the appropriateness of the placement. And those things that you're talking about, the growth that has happened is recognized in that IEP. And we talk about, okay, is it time now to do dual enrollment? Because that's an option. A child can stay half day with us and then move on to another school if it's appropriate to try to help with that transition. Are we ready for that at this point in time? Shall we stay at the non-public school, and how much longer do we think that might go? Or is this child ready to return to a less restrictive environment? And it's important that those discussions happen all of the time to ensure that the child is in the place that they should be.
Right. And it provides the opportunity. Again, you talk a lot about the power of intervention. And so many kids struggle because they're in a traditional school environment. And I've talked about this before. And then they have to, after a long school day, go to speech or go to educational therapy and occupational therapy and then do homework. And it just extends the school day. And it often happens at the expense of other activities that they might have otherwise enjoyed, like an art club or joining a sports team. And it sounds like what an NPS school would do, what this boutique specialized schools would do, it integrates the intervention into the child's school day so that they can enjoy other activities that they wouldn't have been able to otherwise because all the intervention is happening after school.
Absolutely. I remember when my daughters were getting behavioral services when they were very young, and since there were three of them and each of them had services, it was like we had a preschool at home. I mean, there was somebody at our house all the time, but at some point there was sort of like treatment fatigue that was going on because, and right now think of people who are online and they're managing that all the time. And then after finally school is over and you can shut the laptop, now it's time for speech or whatever. So yes, we do that. And we do that in more than one way. So in an, again, individualized way. So the way I described one thing that we could do earlier was how everyone's sort of part of the team. So the OT, the speech, the counselor, they're all informing the classroom all the time. Sort of from a consultation standpoint. And so what the teacher is doing with the classroom and with each individual kid is informed by what else they learned from the OT, the speech provider, and a counselor. In addition to that, children are still getting services. So that may be group services, which we find particularly helpful for kids who have social skills deficits, that they're actually being seen in a group for speech and OT because they can practice those social skills in those groups. So we may have group OT, they may have group speech, they may have individual speech. If a child has an articulation disorder, for instance, it might make more sense that they actually do have individual pull out to work on those sounds. But they might have group OT because it makes more sense for that. And then again, so I've talked about consultation, I talked about pullout and groups. And then there's times when when our providers push in to the classroom. And I've taken, particularly in our preschool program, I've taken parents on a tour of the classroom, and we've gone in and I said, okay, you tell me who the teacher is in this classroom, because you can't tell the difference between the teacher and the OT because they're working in tandem together on certain goals.
Wonderful. And I love the idea of starting early, because we all know the power of intervention. Like, you often say, and I just mentioned, but so many kids don't get that intervention until first grade or second grade. And I love the idea of identifying kids who are delayed or struggling in a particular area early on, because we know the outcome is so much better.
Yeah. And there's no doubt that if we receive kids, the earlier that we receive kids, the earlier they're referred to us and come to us, the more likely they are to get to a less restrictive environment. So
right.
I kind of talked about the kid that might be referred in ninth or 10th grade. Look, they do great. They make gains with us and we help launch them and they do great. But likely they're going to graduate with us. The kid who goes, my daughter who comes in preschool, the kid that comes in third grade, most likely that early intervention is going to be beneficial and kids are going to be able to move to a least restrictive environment. So if I had my way, if I could be in IEPs for kids who are struggling in school, I would hope that over the years that our referrals got younger and younger and younger. It's not necessarily what's happening right now. It's not necessarily what's happening right now, but that's what I would like to see.
I would like to see the same thing. I really would, because, you just see the success stories when that happens, and it's better for the child. It's better for the parents, and it just makes it so much easier for them to access their academic curriculum later on in life when they've had that early intervention in a specialized way.
And also not have to experience the struggle.
Yes.
And they may struggle when they're with us, but we're going to scaffold and we're going to help them and we're going to support them. Right. So struggle might not be the right word, but to experience the failure, I think. Failure in preschool, the failure in kindergarten, the failure in second grade, that starts to become more and more difficult to overcome. It's always the possibility. You always can. People do amazing things. But if we can limit that failure experience prior to determining a kid needs more specialized services, we would be in a much better place.
Absolutely. And, I see that struggle a great deal when kids have not been identified early on and they come third grade, fourth grade, and they've had years of struggle like you've described. It really takes a toll on their self-concept, how they see themselves. It has a mental health component where you get anxiety and you get some sadness. Frustration is absolutely there. And then it also decreases their motivation for persevering and pushing through the struggles that they're experiencing. And it seems like when you can provide a student with an academic environment that, again, meets them where they are and provides them with the support that they need in order to be successful, whether that be socially or academically, that you really are setting up this child for success in whatever way success is defined.
Absolutely. And most so far, I've talked a lot about our schools that are designed for autism or other neurodevelopmental challenges. But we also have schools that are designed for kids who have experienced trauma or have social emotional deficits. And that's where it also is so important to meet students where they are, because it really might not be whether they're on grade level in math right now that matters. It might be that we need to help them learn how to regulate, and that might take a semester to do. And then once we get there, that barrier has now been overcome, and we can now talk about math. But right now, it's their ability to regulate those emotions that are keeping them from being able to benefit from their curriculum. So exactly meeting them where they are, knowing what is the barrier that is really keeping them from progressing and being able to address that, even when that means maybe putting some other things on the back burner for a minute.
Right. And using the example you just gave on regulating emotions, you allow them to develop those self-regulation skills in a safe environment, right? And if you think about kids who've experienced trauma, feeling safe and secure is so important. And it sounds like you provide that feeling of safety and security and allow them to develop those skills in that environment.
In our schools that work primarily with that population, we have adopted Bruce Perry's neurosequential model for education. And so we're really looking at a trauma-informed, trauma-focused way of providing education. And some folks are familiar with doing that in therapy or really looking at it in a child's home environment. But moving that same idea into education, I think, is very important. And the neurosequential model for education, or NME, is a great tool to do that.
Right. And, I am familiar with the help group schools, and I love that you are using these evidence-based programs and, using them in your programs and in your schools and integrating that into the curriculum. And I know that parents have seen their kids struggle, but there's a reluctance to kind of transition to an NPS school. And I wonder, as you put on your hat as a psychologist, what do you say to parents who worry about the stigma associated with sending their kids to a specialized school, a boutique school, particularly for those parents who might be thinking, my child is struggling, but they have a lot of strengths. I want them to go to college. If I send them here, will they still be able to go? How do you address those concerns that some parents have?
Well, first of all, those are the exact concerns they should have, because you're making such an incredible decision, about your child's education, and you should ask all those questions. And whether that's of me or the help group or of any school that you go to, I think it's really important. I do think also that you're now talking about a friend asking you, "Hey, where does your son or daughter go to school?" And just by answering that question, you may be divulging something about your child. So I think that we all work. We work as a team about what's the exciting pieces about making this decision and what might also be challenges about making this decision. We are here to support parents as well. We have parent support groups. Our counselors and our principals are involved with parents. We ask for parent involvement. And when you're a parent and you've just made the decision to have your child in a school like ours, there are many other parents there who have been there for years. And to be able to talk with them about that experience, because they've had the same experience. When someone asks me, where does my child go to school, do I answer Village Glen? Do I answer Summit View? Do I answer Bridgeport? Because maybe some people know what that means. Mm-hmm. And if I do, this is how I handle that. In the end, you hope that a parent takes comfort in knowing that they've done what's best for their child at that moment, and that's about growth, and that it may or may not mean 5 years and graduation. It may mean a year's worth of work, 2 years worth of work, and what you then have done for your child is irreplaceable. So I think how you just described a parent's dilemma is common, and it should be the way that they come about that decision, and that we are all here to help them with that.
Bravo. I mean, you just validated, I think, the experience of many parents by just responding in the way that you did. And that's a real concern. But I think also in your answer, it's the idea that parents, you have to do what is best for your child, right? And not what society thinks is the best for your child, or what the friend who's asking you where your child goes to thinks is best for their child. Parents are making the decisions on what is best for their child. And that's kind of what they should lean into when making these decisions.
I kind of just got chills when you said that, because I think another message that I really want parents to hear is that when they're sitting on an IEP team meeting, it's their meeting. That's their child. And they should never feel hesitant to challenge anyone in that IEP meeting, respectfully, of course, but challenge anyone in that IEP meeting, put their child's interests before anything else that's discussed in that IEP meeting, and be the lead advocate. Even if you bring someone else to the IEP, or even if there's other strong personalities in that room, that is your place. You should look forward to that every year. And hopefully it's a great team and everybody's on the same page and they're wanting to hear from you too. But if it's not quite that, it's nothing. Don't feel guilty. This is your place to speak for your child.
Absolutely. I feel like we need to do a completely different and separate podcast episode on how to advocate for your child in an IEP meeting, because I agree with you that, parents don't feel like they can speak up for their child because they feel like it's run by the school and they have to obey the school's rules and they have to sign what is in front of them. And again, it comes back to you are the voice for your child who may not be in that meeting. And parents know their children better than anyone else. And if they're hearing something that they don't feel would be appropriate for their child, then they need to speak up and they may need some support in doing that. But I love that you mentioned that because I think that is so important for so many parents.
And it isn't easy. It's those are tough meetings. And, fortunately, you tend to hear about maybe IEP meetings that don't go as well. But fortunately, most IEP meetings go really well. And they do what we're trying to do in those meetings. They get us all on the same page. We get focused on the goals for the child. We talk about what the best placement is. And in the end, a large percentage of those IEP meetings end up with a team with a coherent idea of what should happen with the child. And I think that's important to think about, is that a lot of times the system really works and a parent can only make that better, right? A parent's focus on what they need for their child and the IEP team's then response to how to make that happen is what's supposed to happen. And it's nice that it happens so often. When it doesn't, we really need to help those parents.
Absolutely. And I can think of so many parents who've been staunch advocates for their children. And one in particular who, I worked with and was really struggling in a traditional learning environment, had gone to even a charter school and was not successful. Just the needs were not being met. And this child felt really demoralized and there was a lack of motivation for learning, and a kid who used to be really joyful. And that mom really advocated for her child at that IEP meeting. I presented my findings and that child did transition to actually one of your schools. And, mom has communicated with me is just thriving and doing well. And I think that's what you want. You want the child to, again, love learning. I mean, learning, it's a long process. You start in kindergarten and you go all through 12th grade. And if it's day in and day out, something that you are not looking forward to, it just makes learning so much harder. So having your child in an environment where they feel like they are valued, they feel like they are heard, their needs are being met, and they have an opportunity to excel, then that's what you want for your child.
Absolutely. Like you said earlier, bravo. That's the way the story should go.
And kudos to you for being a father of triplet girls.
Triplet girls, they're 13 now, so we got over the hump of the more difficult years, but a few people tell me I might have difficult ones to come.
Well, it sounds like you're doing a great job.
Thank you, Karen.
So, I know that we are wrapping up here, and I just love that you shared all this information about the help group schools, but I think you also touched on parent groups, and you also offer a lot of great programs outside of, the specialized boutique schools to support kids in a number of different ways. And I'd love for you to kind of touch on some of those programs for students who may not be enrolled in one of the help group schools, but who could still benefit from these great programs that you offer. Right now, I know that many of them are online. and actually accessible to more people for that reason.
That's a great topic, actually, is that we have had participants in, we have a program called Kids Like Me, which outside of the pandemic era is basically after school opportunities to come and get together. But we've been offering those online, and we have folks all over the country now. We have some international people who are staying up at 3 o'clock in the morning to I don't know how they're doing that, to be in our classes. So that's great. But yeah, we have Kids Like Me who will do like cooking classes or get together to watch a movie and talk about it, or gaming together, or things like that. All of those classes are going on all the time, and you can find that information on our website at www.thehelpgroup.org. We also have camps. Usually those camps are during those times when school is out. So between the winter break or the summer break, we have camp activities that are available for not just our students, but anyone. We have a program for young adults called Advance LA, which came from watching our kids do well with us in high school, where they're getting lots of support, and then going off beyond high school and starting to struggle. And we wanted to provide that net to be able to catch those kids and provide some support to them so that they can be successful in maybe it's the job that they're working in now, or maybe it's college. So that's a great program. You can find information on the website about that as well. We're also doing monthly webcasts right now. We did one earlier this week for about 1,100 people across the country, and we had some participants in the UK, Yemen, Bahrain, and they all on their registration, they all put they heard about us through word of mouth. So I'm not sure how it's getting across the ocean.
That's amazing.
So we do a lot. We also, Karen, have one of the largest contracts with LA County Department of Mental Health, our outpatient service program, particularly for families who have Medi-Cal. So that can be individual counseling. It can be more intensive family work where we come to your house. The whole array of services that are available under DMH. So that's a big part of what the help group does as well outside of our school programs.
Wonderful. And if a listener is saying, I want to access some of those services, whether it be a webinar, whether it be, a camp or Kids Like Me program remotely, what is the best way for them to get in touch with someone to figure out what would be a best fit for their child?
They can always find information on the website. So www.thehelpgroup.org. Don't forget the www.thehelpgroup.org. You can always email me. Most of the help group's email addresses are first initial last name at thehelpgroup.org. So Bolton at thehelpgroup.org. You can get to me. I may refer you to our admissions department at that point in time, but I will definitely make sure that you get to the person that you need to get to. Otherwise, there's so many different people you have to know. So you can use me as a front door, and I'll get you to where you need to go.
Wonderful. And we will put all that information in the show notes for this episode. Jason, thank you so much for being on the show today. You provided such great information that I think that a lot of families will want to access. So thank you so much for coming on and for all the work that you are doing and the help group is doing to support so many families.
Thank you, Karen. And I just have to say pretty much the same thing about you. What you're doing right here is such value to the community, and we thank you as well for working in the best interests of children in our community and in the country, right?
Yes, absolutely. So thank you again.
Bye-bye.
I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed this conversation. And I think one of the main takeaways I have is that if you have a child who has struggled or is struggling with learning, processing, or social emotional difficulties, that everything that you are feeling, that you are experiencing, that you are thinking is valid. And it is up to you to be an advocate for your child and to not shy away from that. That may mean your child staying in their current environment, current academic environment, and getting the support that they need to thrive. It may mean transitioning to a micro school, an independent study program, or an NPS school. But whatever that decision is, you are doing as a parent what is best for your child, and you should feel good about that. I am so glad that you have chosen to listen to this podcast. It means so much to me, and I would really love it if you've enjoyed this episode and you've learned a lot, if you would take a few moments to leave a review. What it does is it really helps other people find this podcast, and that would help us out quite a bit. Thank you again for listening, and I'll chat with you next time.
Thanks for listening to Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus. For more resources, visit us online at childnexus.com.